The Empirical Energy Podcast blows open the silent revolution, rewriting the rules of global energy markets. Measured, verified energy is no longer an alternative. It's becoming the gold standard. We dive deep with the producers, traders, consultants, and renegades driving this seismic shift. Step inside the raw mechanics of how verification and blockchain-fueled trading are dismantling the old systems and creating a future where alternative energy doesn't just compete, it takes over. This is the movement of reshaping energy as we know it, bold, unstoppable, and just getting started. Here is your host, Mark Smith.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of a brand new podcast that will soon be launched by its host. And I'm here to say hello to him and let him introduce you to the new podcast that we believe is going to make a lot of noise. So with that, everybody, meet my guest, but actually the host of this show, Mark Smith. Welcome to your own show, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. Looking forward to episode 1.
Yeah. So you and I talked about this podcast a long time ago, and then you went away and did a lot of work. And then out of the blue, one day you reached out to me and said, Nick, we're ready to announce to the whole world our new operation that's going to break all the rules and change the game completely. And so here we are. So we are about to launch your podcast. So tell us about, first of all, start with what the podcast is called and what it's about.
All right, so the podcast is called Empirical Energy, and it's really about the transformation that's happening already in the trading, in energy trading. And so it's focused on how energy producers, traders, buyers can benefit from trading energy products that are verified through scientific measurement rather than outdated emission factors. And so this podcast really is about the journey that we're going to take the listeners on as we go and find these brand new market opportunities around empirical energy.
I see. So this, as you were talking about these energy products, suddenly in my mind, I thought about the financial meltdown, and suddenly that experience of all the bundles being created with financial products without really proper oversight. So in the energy product industry, tell me about how that part of it takes place, and then connect that to the podcast that you're going to be launching about how you intend to cover those areas in the podcast.
Well, most people really don't understand how energy is actually traded, physical energy, and how it's measured today. So, you heard of the Paris Climate Accord. And all right, so we're going to take listeners on a journey, and they're going to discover how we help our actual clients to capture premium pricing opportunities and leverage the latest in AI, blockchain, and measurement technologies to scale alternative energy. So each episode is going to provide some actionable insights, practical strategies from stuff we're actually doing. So we actually live and do this stuff for real.
So this is about the whole energy trading. You are almost looking to be somewhat of a standard, right? Bring some kind of a standard into the whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, it's already happening right now to where the alternative energies, so bio-LNG or biomethanol or these AI data centers, everything else, these new standards like ISCC or ISO 14067, they require empirical measurement. They don't even accept the old emission factors anymore. So if you want to trade in this brand new international trading standards, you're going to need to do empirical measurement.
I see. So this podcast is going to bring a lot of clarity to what's going on right now, and frankly, educate the people, because it's very limited. I guess this is very new, right?
Brand new, absolutely brand new. So yeah, we're going to guests on there are going to include subject matter experts, who can help set up the foundational principles of empirical energy. We're going to have producers, which are our actual clients that are doing this. We're going to have energy traders. Like, I'm looking forward to the episode that I'm shooting in a little bit with Gunvor, $150 billion a year energy trader. We're also going to have, other industry thought leaders who are, influencers in the energy trading world.
As far as your guests, so give us a rundown again on the types of guests that you intend to have on the show.
Well, like I said, some of our clients like Pure West Energy are going to be sharing about how they've actually implemented empirical energy in their business. We're going to have some people that are on my team, like a former NASA scientist who brings deep expertise into measurement technologies. As I mentioned, Gunvor, we're going to have actual energy traders on there. We're going to break down how these trades are done piece by piece.
So what I'm hearing is producers. That's one category of guests. Of course, they are going to be the ones who will share, if you like, almost like a case study, right, of how they are using empirical energy. And then you've got experts that are bringing their point of view, and then what are the fundamentals of this concept. And then you also have the traders who get to do this on daily basis, right? Yeah, cool. So share with us some of the topics that will be discussed during the show.
So one of the interesting things that I'm doing is I'm actually writing a book called Empirical Energy. Okay. And I'm actually going to be using, in fact, all the listeners and the experts and the guests that I have on here are going to actually help me write this book, right? So you're going to actually find, some very interesting things. And so, yeah. So in the table of contents, if you think about, for a book like this, is going to include what is empirical energy, how do the premiums work, how all that works, and then I'm going to break down a framework called MMRVT. So it's monitoring, measuring, reporting, verifying, and trading. And again, we actually created a blockchain trading environment. And then we're going to get down to specific types of energy. So how you would actually use empirical energy trading to trade like an AI data center, or LNG that could be shipped around the world, or biomethanol, or a low carbon fuel stock that could be used to produce, let's say, low carbon tires, things like that.
So this is all, you almost like you have the roadmap to empirical energy based on your book's table of contents, and you're going to bring in the guests to speak about every one of those subjects with different perspectives. Would that be right?
Yeah, it is right. And it's interesting because even on, I was a guest on another podcast and we talked about empirical energy. It's a little hack that I did. I actually took a transcript of that interview and I put it into ChatGPT, and it came out with actually the outline, the first intro chapter to the book. So I'm actually going to be talking about AI, how it's used in energy trading, but I'm actually using AI. In fact, in our business, we use computer vision AI, machine modeling, and Gen AI in our business. And I'm going to be talking all three with real practical examples.
So, at the end of the day, everybody's afraid of AI taking jobs and, eliminating human beings. But really, AI is ultimately the facilitator here. Your guests and you are the sources of whatever the subject matter is, and AI is just making it easy to distribute, right?
We've all heard the adage, right? Anything new coming along, you can either make it happen, you can watch it happen, or you could wonder what happened. Okay. The people in that last camp who are wondering what happened are the ones that, quite frankly, will be replaced. So I'm really talking to the people who are going to be following what's happening and then giving them the courage and the on-ramps to jump in to participate with us to make it happen. So I'm hoping my listeners are the ones who are going to take action and actually make empirical energy happen and benefit from all the changes that are going to take place.
This actually is a good segue to my next question. Somebody tuning in to this podcast, either via audio or video, what are some of the benefits of being a listener or being a subscriber or being a viewer?
Right. Again, they're going to have access to a brand new cutting edge trading strategies. And so quite frankly, we hope everybody tuning in, whether it's consultants who want something new for their practice, this is going to be cutting edge stuff so they can make money consulting around empirical energy. There's going to be insurance people who watch and think, wait a second, I can add a whole new business line and make money off this. It's called parametric insurance. There's going to be traders who are going to see trades broken down, and quite frankly, they're going to go find buyers, bring them in, and be the ones who are benefiting from this. And obviously, the producers are going to want to get in and get into this flow by getting their production empirically measured and taking advantages of the premiums that are available.
So this is an ecosystem where several different parties are benefiting from it in many, many different ways, right?
That's right. Yeah. And we are working, and as one part, we're going to float all the boats in the harbor, so to speak.
So I'm going to ask my next question, which I know is your favorite subject, and you can go on and on talking about it because ever since I met you, you are always talking about it. So why are you doing this? Why this podcast? How does it factor into your bigger plan?
Well, okay. So right now, if you think about what's going on in the world, right, we have these two camps. One saying, hey, fossil fuels all the way. It's the future, right? It's the explosion of energy dominance and things like that. Then you have this other camp saying, well, fossil fuels are bad and we should go do everything wind and solar. But neither one is saying based on what. Is it they're inherently bad or inherently good? Like, what does that mean? Well, what if we have an abundant source of natural gas in the US, right? But until it's empirically measured, what if natural gas could be produced and the energy coming out of it was the same carbon intensity as the entire supply chain of solar? Well, wait a second. I thought oil and gas were just inherently bad. Says who? Says what? Like, let's measure all the energy and let it compete based on that empirical measurement. This will literally end wars. Let me tell you a story right here, right? So one of my guests is coming up, Dr. Richard Kleinberg. He did an entire study and presented to Congress. And it was about this very subject. And it was after the whole Russia invaded Ukraine. They were like, Europe was cutting them off and said, we're not going to buy any of your oil and gas. Okay. But they appealed to their laws about buying the cleanest source of energy. And they said, well, our energy is cleaner than the US. Really? Based on what? Emission factors. We have emission factors. You have emission factors. We declare that our energy is cleaner. You're required to buy it still. Well, it put them in a dilemma. Literally, so they kept funding it, and they're funding wars over this stuff. So this is geopolitical stuff because nothing's measured. Also, we're into the Paris Climate Accord. We're out of it. Do you know what the Paris Climate Accord, the entire basis of it is emission factors. They don't empirically measure anything. So how in the world, why are we spending trillions of dollars, trillions, the world is, trillions of dollars, and they have no idea if it's getting better or worse? Not whatsoever. It's not empirically measured. So what's the point? And yet trillions of dollars of your taxpayer money are going to fund these things that aren't measured at all. This is, to me, one of the biggest scams in history, and it needs to be fixed with empirical measurement.
So, as the saying goes, what you cannot measure, you cannot improve, right? So how does something like this get created as a concept in the first place and the laws are made? I mean, how does that ever happen?
Because someone, they just figured, hey, we need to do this. And, we're declaring this stuff to be, negative or positive. Is subjective. It's completely subjective. So they make rules and stuff. And I'm saying, fine, let's just let energy compete on its empirical measurement. That's it. And what we found with the producers who actually do empirical measurement is it gamifies the whole system. So in my opinion, this replaces thousands and thousands of pages of regulation. You don't need them. You really don't. Because once a producer can empirically measure in real time what's going on, they're actually challenged to go, wait a second, I just produced this at 0.09 method intensity, and they see the data and like, wait, if I tweak this thing here, I can get it down to 0.06 or 0.03. It's automatic. It's self-reinforcing. When you're using emission factors, you're completely guessing. You're 100%. You have no idea how to improve it because you don't have the actual data.
So once you start measuring, I mean, obviously measuring is one thing. It's like you get behind the wheel and let's say you have no way to measure your speed, you just drive, right? So, but once you start to measure and you see numbers, that is just the first step. The next step is to regulate it. Okay, if it's built up area, you can't do more than, 30 miles an hour. If it's expressway, you can't do more than, depending on which state you are in, 55 or 65, whatever. So isn't that the next step? Once you start measuring, then some kind of regulation is going to have to come in and say, okay, this is what you need to do.
So the market is now ahead of the regulators by years. Okay, so the regulators are still using emission factors. They have no idea how to do what we're doing, right? Whereas the market's like, hey, I need to figure out how to do it at scale. I need technology like AI and other things to speed up the whole process, and digital twins and things that we figured out. So the market will drive it. And then the market says, hey, I want a product that, they call it feedstocks, and I want it to have a carbon intensity score of 30 or 0 or whatever. So the market will drive this. And there's already international standards around this. We're going to make up anything, ISO 14067. So they can either recreate something that already exists, or simply go, hey, if someone already has a third-party certification, ISO 14067 with mass balance, we accept that. Do you realize that most people in the EPA, they can't even read an empirical, like if you turned in the empirical report, they have nobody qualified to even read it. If, on the other hand, they got a report in and it came with a certification letter and said, hey, we certified it, it's a valid thing, we're fine. It's how the industry evolved with financial accounting, right? You can trade a stock because they've been audited by one of the big 5 accounting firms and they followed government accounting principles. So when the government didn't audit it, it was a third party audited by Deloitte and Touche or somebody like that. And now you can trust the numbers that are in there, which are the basis for the value of that stock. That whole ecosystem is set. All we're saying is, let's do the same thing.
As you are talking, and at the moment that you said the market will determine that requirement, you know what I thought of? I don't know if you are into brandy or cognac, whichever one you want to call. So first of all, if the brandy comes from cognac region of France, then it's called cognac. Otherwise, it's called brandy. So for those who don't know. But the way they grade them is you have VSOP, you have Napoleon, you have VS. So there's all these different levels of it. And of course, it's to do with aging. So when you're buying it, of course, depending on what it is, you have XO that is better than all of them. So what these brands do, they take pride in the quality of their product and they say, you know what, our VSOP, which is the lower one, is better than the Napoleon of this brand. So what happens is the consumer automatically decides, oh, I'd rather go with this brand because their quality is higher. But there is a measurement even in brandy. So that's what I'm hearing. So this actually is a much, much better way because it gets rid of the government from arbitrarily making decisions and imposing things, right? So it's the market decides. And then as long as you are able to measure it, then that's what they go by.
Yeah, and take that analogy to the next level. So now you're going into your favorite cocktail bar, and they're going to make a mixed drink, and they're not just going to pour straight cognac or straight tequila, whatever. They're going to mix it with a bunch of things. So all the drink aficionados would know, well, okay, if I'm going to have a drink and it's based on a certain kind of, what tequila did they put in there? Is it some cheap stuff that because then the drink is going to taste different than if you use the good stuff, right? But it's more than subjective. There are standards that you have in that, and that's exactly what's happening in this feedstock blending world. They want to know that cocktail mix of energy was produced with measurement between it. Otherwise, you can have low grade or high grade or this or that, and it's not going to, I mean, in some cases, the mix could blow up something. You put the wrong cocktail into a ship that's going from China to Europe to deliver goods, it has to have a certain, if you don't have the right biofuel mix,
Yeah.
Bad things happen. The engine blows up.
This, in fact, will define good energy versus bad energy in a way that can be measured without being subjective, right?
And where we're going, there were other certifications in the past, but they were subjective. So they said, oh, we give this energy producer an A.
Yeah. Based on what?
Well, what does that mean? We don't care about any of that. We just say, here's the carbon intensity, here's how much throughput, when it was produced. Essentially, there's a relatively new concept called EACs, or energy attribute certificates, or environmental attribute certificates. Think of it like a birth certificate for energy. And now, for the first time, all these technologies can go together. So we produce this EAC as an NFT on the blockchain, which is immutable, can be changed, can be combined into different combinations. That technology didn't exist years ago. So what the industry would do is try to track all this stuff in gobbledygook of spreadsheets. Made it really hard, like 6 weeks of back end work, and they would deliver this, pile of spreadsheets, which are all different standards and whatever. And we said, this is not going to work. But on the blockchain, you have immutable NFTs as EACs. They can be combined in different ways, different formulas, and that person buying that collection can go back to each one of those birth certificates, those EACs, track it, look at the GHG statement, look at where it was produced, when it was produced, completely trackable all the way through the supply chain.
Mark, so we talked about what kind of guests, and I'm assuming the three types of guests would also be your audience, right? Who would be tuning into this? Who would be interested in this? Of course, other producers would want to know how producers are using empirical energy. Other traders would want to know how other traders, so your guests and your audience are pretty much the same, and they will all learn from each other in this ecosystem, right?
That's right. And so the early adopters of this, they had a choice to make. Do we keep it all close to the vest? Do we let's not let this secret out? Like, we figured something out. We're making money off of it. Let's just keep it to ourselves. But they all said, we actually want the world to know what we're doing. Maybe not everything, but eventually everything. And we want it to know because we really are passionate about getting this standard out there and creating enough volume and trading and opportunity for everybody that it can become a new thing. Right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been proven over and over. In fact, the best example is, even though he's not very popular these days, Elon Musk, right? He says all their patents, they're open source. They didn't patent anything. I mean, they didn't protect anything. All their patents, they open it up. Even though he's taking a hit, he's still one of the richest out there. So when you share it with others, usually it always comes back in multiple folds. So that's what's happening here.
Right. So you differentiate by the way you execute on the goal and how you do it and how you automate it. And even says like the factory is the product, right? His ability to crank out cars every few minutes at a certain level, and then they drive themselves off the lot. And there's lots and lots of innovation that all comes together, and we have the same kind of thing.
Yeah. In fact, I came across an interview the other day about this guy the guy who wrote the book about Steve Jobs, one of the latest ones. In fact, it got made into a movie. He asked Steve Jobs, "What is the best product that you've created?" And so he says, I'm thinking he's going to say iPhone, he's going to say, Mac. But you know what Steve Jobs said? He said the team that he put together. So the team and the execution, ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
It really does. And so you're going to see a lot of our team that I interview on there, like I said, the NASA scientists to the consultants we hire that understand the ISCC. You're going to see the people who understands all the chemical engineering. You're going to see the energy traders. You're going to see the AI data scientists, all that really diverse team to put this all together.
Great. So I can see you're very excited about this. And my standard question for anybody starting a new podcast, why are you doing this? I know you're passionate about the subject, but why the podcast? Because it takes time, and you and I have been working already to put all the moving parts together. So what is the reason behind starting this podcast?
Okay, so we're talking to really serious customers, big players, the Exxons, the Chevrons, big players. And anybody will tell you that before someone know, like, and trust you, okay, they got to see 11 to 13 pieces of content, okay, out there. And quite frankly, that's been happening. I mean, since the beginning of Clean Connect, I've had webinars. I had another podcast called Digital Roughnecks, okay, that we've ended and now starting this new thing for new opportunity. And what happens is by the time someone's ready to have that first call, the first thing they say is, especially they see this hat here and they say, I feel like I know you, Mark. Now, remember, mind you, I've never met them before on a Zoom call or anything like that. They say, well, why? What do you mean? He goes, well, I found you first because I Googled, Quad OB, EPA stuff. Your YouTube video came up. Okay. And I watched it. I watched another one. And then there was a link in there. And I went over to your website. I downloaded your EPA cheat sheet. And then I started watching some webinars. So I've seen so much of your stuff. I feel like I know you. I said, well, that's fantastic. That's it. It provides education, and it, helps people understand before they're ready to have that conversation to take it to the next level.
I have done so many of these first episode recordings with so many people, and nobody has given me the pragmatic response that you've just given to this question. They all say, we just want to tell stories. We want to, of course you want to tell stories, but how is that going to benefit you in the end, right? So, and here you are, and you're just spelling it out exactly how it is. So people are looking for content to educate themselves about who they are meeting, about the subject matter pertaining to whoever they are meeting, and they want to know where you will be coming from, and podcasts produce that content easily and in many forms, from audio to video to shorts to you name it. So, and you are just tapping into that. So it's
and in addition, it's helping me write a book. It's helping me. We have an empirical energy conference coming up in August and other things. And quite frankly, I look at some of the things that need to be written about, talked about, and it's beyond my expertise. But I can bring somebody out as a guest, ask them a bunch of questions, and maybe it's the first time they've ever been interviewed. And if I can, we can talk and they share, well, then that content not only is useful for the listeners, of course, but it's also interesting for me because I can get it transcribed, feed it in, and, that information becomes white papers, becomes future webinars, becomes part of the book, becomes all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I've already been reusing my own content, let alone interviews and things that I've done in the past. So it's extremely useful.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
I'll let you know a little hack too. When I launched IoT, the previous podcast, Digital Roughnecks, I knew nothing about the energy industry. Okay. So, but people would listen to me interviewing people, and eventually, I learned the lingo, asked good questions, and eventually I became that expert because of the interview. So I would recommend anybody start one if they want to become an expert in a specific niche.
Totally agree.
It's a great way to do it. Great way to meet people and build relationship too with your guests. And it's overall it's a good thing.
All right, so let's now get to know you a little bit. So who is Mark Smith? Tell us the full story, and you've got 15 seconds to say. So where did you grow up, and how did you I'm not interested in the bio part usually. I'm always curious about what you used to do as a kid that either resembled or started what you do today? Where did the interest come from?
Okay, so I remember being I don't even know, let's say 12-year-old kid. My dad said, hey, I want to earn some extra money. Okay, great. Well, I need the eaves of the house painted. It's in California, and I'm like, all right, I could do that for $1.75 an hour. So you can tell how old I am. And I'm up there. It's a hot summer day, and I'm trying to get done as quickly as I can. And I remember coming in, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I finished, and I wanted him to look at it, and I'm sweating like crazy. And he's inside. He's got his yellow pad. My dad was an electrical engineer, and he's drawing squiggles and formulas and stuff on a piece of paper. And I'm going, I'm out there sweating like crazy for $1.75, and you're inside here just squiggling on paper, and I know you're making a whole lot more money than I am. And he said, Mark, it's because I'm not paying you to do differential equations. Now, a lot of things happen. One, I had no idea what a differential equation was, but all I knew was that moment changed my life. I do not want to work outside in the hot sun. I want to be inside figuring out, solving problems for people. Okay. And so it actually, that whole thing, I would go back to that all the time and say, okay, what can I do? And I became a programmer pretty early on, learning how to do all this stuff, software developer, to work inside and air conditioning, and just solve these kind of problems. So for me, and the bigger problems I could solve, the more money I would make. Pretty simple. And that's true in any entrepreneurial journey. And it's certainly true of this today. You get in there, and if you can meet with someone and say, hey, what's keeping you up at night? How do you actually do what you do? And you listen for where the problems are. And if you can solve those kind of things, and that's how we built our business, is solving those problems for people, really digging in there and rolling up our sleeves and figuring them out. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about solving problems for the traders, for the producers, for all the people in the ecosystem, insurance, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I mean, there is another thing about solving problems, and solving especially bigger problems. Those have less competition because they are difficult to solve. You end up with less people competing in that same space. So focusing on problems, the big problems, they not only reward you much, much more handsomely, but also there's less competition that you have to deal with. Do you find that also in your space?
Yeah, it happened from the very beginning. I remember our first client, PDC Energy, they didn't tell us all at first what the main problem, but they said, hey, can you solve this? We need to do tank level monitoring. So we figured that out and showed them proof of concept. And they said, all right, we have this vision for a suite of computer vision models. And, it had gas leak and liquid leak and fire and smoke and PB, all these things. I said, what is it ultimately you're trying to do? Well, if we had this suite, we wouldn't need to hire night operators or gate operators. And in fact, our people wouldn't even need to go out to the site as much, because the biggest danger in oil and gas, surprisingly, not something blowing up. It's actually truck accidents going to and from these remote sites. That's it. So the less people I put on the road, the safer it is for them, and the less things when they're on site needing to go up and crawl up on really dangerous areas, the safer it is. So really, they were driven by safety. They were driven. And so we had developed this suite, and all of our competitors were doing point solutions. It's the same thing back in the day when, if you can remember, there was a couple of spreadsheets, Lotus 1, 2, 3, Microsoft Excel, and people would say, oh, I need a spreadsheet thing. But Microsoft didn't sell you Excel. What did they sell you? They sold you Office 365. So they changed the things. You don't need a spreadsheet. You need office productivity. You need this whole suite. So we thought that's exactly what we're going to do. So our suite, in fact, is called Autonomous 365. We sell a suite. Our competitors sell a point solution, and that's why we win.
So I'm curious. Have you ever told your father that it was that moment that he told you why he does what he does?
I did. Yeah. Before he passed away. Yeah, I did. He knew that, and he laughed. I don't even know if he could remember that story, but yeah, that I inspired him, because he just said, yeah, he said, I said that. Differential equation, yes. And that's
Yeah. So I'm glad you got to tell him that, because I ask people, because they describe the moments or the people who were significant for what they've done in their lives and where they are today. And I asked them, have you ever gotten to tell him that or tell her that? And a lot of the people say, no, I never. You know what the standard answer is? Oh, he knew. Well, that's not the question. The question is, have you ever told him that? So it's a big difference.
no, I've gone back. I've literally gone back because, I'm 65 years old, right? So I think of the people I've impacted. And so, yeah, I've actually gone back to a number of my mentors along the way and sent them letters where I literally detailed out the moment, specific moments. And, I've been able to go out to meals with them and talk to them about it. And everybody really, really appreciates that feedback, especially as you're getting older in your life and you're evaluating what legacy have I left behind. So to have some younger guy or whatever show up and say, here, how you impacted me is a big deal.
Unsolicited also, right?
Unsolicited,
big
correct.
Deal. Great. So, Mark, tell us again about what is the name of the podcast, how can people find it, and also give us a little bit about Clean Connect, because that's the company behind Empirical Energy, right? So tell us a little bit about Clean Connect and give us your contact information for you personally as well as Clean Connect.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on there pretty regularly. You can also reach out to me by email, and I'm sure all of these things will be in the show notes and whatnot. Also on YouTube, there'll be a YouTube channel here where you can find our videos and stuff, and on the various podcast channels that this will be on. So there's a number of ways you can reach out, and I think, but I'm also encouraging you, because as I interview the guests, each of them will have their own contact information. I totally encourage you to reach out to the guests. Like you say, I don't know if I want to talk to that host just yet. I really want to check out and see, is what he's saying is true? And so being able to actually talk to our clients, we'll get permission for all that stuff. But many of them are like, yeah, they can reach out to me and see, hey, this stuff is real. It's all real. There's proof. And we'll be publishing that over and over again and stuff like that. So yeah, all the typical ways: LinkedIn, email, YouTube, whatnot.
Yeah. And the podcast is called Empirical Energy.
Empirical Energy, yeah. Which I'm still working on a tagline. It could be the future of energy trading.
Yeah, I like that tagline. Great. Thank you, Mark. Very exciting. I'm sure you are, really pumped up with this whole thing. And, this is going to make a huge impact in the energy trade, producers, and it will impact, because energy is what everybody needs. And here you are, you're becoming a standard in that space. It's a big deal.
That's right. So yeah, it's really the intersection of energy, crypto, and AI. And we're going to be talking about all three and that bullseye intersection between all three.
Great. Very exciting. And thank you for being a guest on your own show. And I'm sure that people will be tuning in with great expectations.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. And this brings us to the end of this episode. Exciting subject.
The Empirical Energy Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.